What's up everyone, and welcome back to the MMA Zone. Today, let's get started with Aljamain Sterling saying that there are several reasons why Michael Chandler does not care about fighter pay. Fighter pay has become a hot button issue over the last year, thanks to some fighters speaking out about their situation, including Angela Hill and even Francis Ngannou, and it's aided by the fact that Jake Paul continues to shout from the rooftops about it. Just a few weeks ago, former lightweight title challenger Michael Chandler revealed that he's fine with the way things are concerning fighter pay. The former three-time Bellator lightweight champion went so far as to say that fighters who complain about fighter pay simply don't know how to utilize the platform and opportunities that they are given by the UFC to make more money outside of the promotion. He loves how he gets all these opportunities outside of the promotion to make extra dough, whether it's from starting a YouTube channel, getting bits in films, or starting a t-shirt company. One guy who clearly doesn't agree with Chandler's assessment is UFC bantamweight champion Aljamain Sterling. He insinuated that Chandler had inherent opportunities that are not given to other fighters, given that Chandler was also an NCAA Division I champion all those years ago. This is what he stated in a recent video on his YouTube channel.
But he doesn't understand that the situations of the other fighters, clearly he doesn't understand this because he wouldn't have said what he said if he did. The backstories of the other fighters that aren't making the type of money that Michael Chandler is making, and that is the difference. I think once he looks at it from a different perspective, different set of lens, I think he would change what he was saying.
Chandler is coming off a spectacular knockout win over Tony Ferguson at UFC 274 just a few weeks ago, and he called out Conor McGregor for a fight whenever the Irishman returns. Meanwhile, Sterling is likely going to defend his title against former bantamweight champion TJ Dillashaw sometime later this year. But where do you stand on this whole fighter pay issue? Do you feel that fighters should be paid much more than they currently are? And what do you make of Sterling's comments about Chandler? Tony Ferguson makes USADA testing claim, and USADA responds. Is there an issue with USADA testing? Tony Ferguson is talking about a situation that he found fishy, piggybacking off of a USADA story told by Chael Sonnen on his YouTube channel recently. Tony took to Twitter to respond to that video, and he made a comment without any emojis or hyperbole, which is kind of unusual for him. Anyway, this is what Tony tweeted. Usually, USADA tests as soon as I get into the arena, almost every time. This time, I wasn't tested day before or day of. They tried to have me sign a beneficiary agreement before I wrapped my hands, which never happened in any of my fights UFC 274. Ever since USADA linked up with the UFC to do drug testing on their athletes in 2005, UFC fighters have expressed their dismay at the whole process, saying it's cumbersome and a burden sometimes to meet a USADA representative for out-of-competition testing especially. In response, this is what a USADA spokesperson told Bloody Elbow, an MMA publication, about Tony's claims. It's not part of USADA procedure to have an athlete sign a beneficiary agreement, and we did not approach Mr. Ferguson with such a request. What are your thoughts on Ferguson's comments here? And what do you think about USADA's response? Marvin Vettori thinks Paulo Costa will destroy the few brain cells Luke Rockhold has left. The UFC is still trying to make the Paulo Costa-Luke Rockhold fight a reality, and while the dates keep getting pushed back and back, the UFC is holding firm on finally having August 20th be the date for this showdown. It will be Rockhold's return to the 185-pound division, of which he reigned supreme for one hot minute back in late 2015 when he was champion. Rockhold lost the middleweight title in his first defense of the belt, losing by first-round knockout to Michael Bisping just 6 months later. After beating up on David Branch in his next fight, he was knocked out again, this time by Yoel Romero in 2013 in the third round. He tried to move up to light heavyweight and fought Jan Blachowicz, who was a contender at the time, and Rockhold was once again knocked out, hitting the canvas in the second round in July 2019. We're now coming up on 3 years since Rockhold last fought in the octagon. He's now moved right back down to the middleweight division, and he's looking to shoot up the rankings by taking on former title challenger Paulo Costa, who is also currently tied ranked number 4 in the division. Costa, however, is a formidable opponent for Rockhold, as the Brazilian is a knockout artist, having earned 11 of his 13 victories by a KO. That's why Marvin Vettori, Costa's last opponent, is saying that Rockhold will likely get knocked out again in this fight. This is what he stated in a recent interview with Helen Yee.
I see Luke Rockhold losing the few brain cells that he has left in his brain and just going to sleep badly for a few minutes. So, but yeah, like Rockhold, they're two guys that their stock, they're not high right now, so makes sense that they fight each other,
Costa missed weight in his last bout last year against Vettori and even lost that catchweight fight at 205 pounds. But Costa is adamant that he should remain in the middleweight division. Still, what do you think of Vettori's comments here? And who do you have your money on between Costa and Rockhold? Don't forget to take a second to hit that like button and subscribe to the MMA Zone to stay up to date on all of the latest fight news. Booked. Paddy Pimblett versus Jordan Leavitt on July 23. The UFC is booking a lightweight clash that involves the UK's favorite fighter of the moment, Paddy Pimblett. He'll be returning to the UFC London Octagon to take on fellow lightweight Jordan Leavitt on July 23. In just 2 fights, Pimblett has been able to grow his already massive following, putting on great shows for the fans and finishing his opponents inside of the first round. Paddy is coming off a big win over Rodrigo Cazula Vargas by a submission at UFC London this past March. On July 23rd, he'll be sharing the octagon with the Monkey King himself, Leavitt, a tough lightweight who is 3-1 in the UFC and riding a 2-fight winning streak. Leavitt's last win was just this past April, having beaten Trey Ogden by split decision. This is certainly going to be Pimblett's toughest test to date, as Leavitt has only lost 1 fight in his career. At the same time, fight fans would have thought that the UFC would have matched up Pimblett against Othman Azatar, given their brief but physical encounter that took place in the Fighters Hotel the week of the UFC London card back in March. Despite all that, the UFC London card for July 23 features some banger fights for the O2 crowd, including Tom Aspinall versus Curtis Blades, Darren Till versus Jack Hermanson, and Alexander Gustafsson's return to light heavyweight division against Nikita Krylov. Paul Craig is also going to take on Volkan Ozdemir in a very interesting light heavyweight matchup. What do you think about this fight between Pimblett and Leavitt, and who's your early favorite to win this bout?
How's the body? I have to ask you, you're coming back from injury. What's the schedule for you?
The body's doing good. I'm out here with my full team. Obviously I'm enjoying the Monaco Grand Prix. And then, after that, we're gonna up the training a little bit by bit. I should be able to kick now. I have another CT scan now in the coming days. And then I'll be cleared to kick. Once I can kick and grapple, I'll be back in no time. So boxing training is going well, and strength training, and that's all. I'm excited to get back.
What about another boxing fight? I mean, any thoughts about that? Is that on the horizon again, potentially for you?
Boxing is, my first love in combat sports is boxing. So, I had such a great time the last time I was out there. Obviously, my return will be inside the octagon for the UFC and mixed martial arts. That story is far from over. In fact, that story is just being wrote. It's just beginning. So, that's where I will make my return. But boxing for sure, I will grace the squared circle again for sure in the future.
Jake Paul warned over taking a boxing match against Anderson Silva. Anderson Silva's longtime boxing coach, Luis Carlos Dorrea, is laughing off claims that Jake Paul can beat Anderson Silva in a boxing match. In fact, Dorrea wants the fight to happen, if only to show the world how good Silva is, even so far past his prime. Silva, at 47 years old, is getting deeper and deeper into the boxing world, taking on tougher and tougher competition. The legendary MMA fighter, who retired from the octagon several years ago, is fresh off a dominant win over Bruno Machado in a boxing exhibition last weekend. After the bout, Silva called out Jake Paul, given that Paul has been making claims he can beat some of the best MMA fighters out there. Jake Paul is 5-0 in his boxing career, including 2 knockout wins over former MMA champions Ben Askren and Tyron Woodley. Still, Silva is no ordinary fighter. The Spider is considered one of the greatest of all time in MMA, and Father Time hasn't seemed to slow him down. In a recent interview with MMA Fighting, this is what his boxing coach, Dorrea, stated about any potential Jake Paul-Anderson Silva boxing fight. He never fought a striker. He has to think of an exhibition boxing match. If he's considering an official fight, I think he will pay dearly. In promoting, it's all valid. He's doing his part, using his tongue. But you can't use your tongue inside the ring. You have to use your fists, and it's a whole other story. Anderson is far better. What do you make of Dorrea's comments here? And if this fight does get put together, who do you think would win out of Anderson Silva against Jake Paul? Today's video was packed with some juicy stories from the fight world. What are your thoughts about what's going on in MMA? Don't forget to smash the like button and subscribe to the MMA Zone to see more videos just like this. See you next time.